Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supergirl, Gotham, as well as Lucifer. So in this episode of Supergirl, very interestingly enough, we finally get to see what Myriad's all about. It's a mind controlling system. Essentially, they use Max Lord's satellites as a way to bounce the signal around, kind of making it stronger so that it covered all of Central City. Sadly, only 3 people weren't affected. Supergirl, Max Lord himself, and Cat. Cat wasn't affected because I was wondering, I was like, okay, are we just making it so Cat's not affected? No, there's a reason behind it, because Max sent her some earrings that basically he made some technology to prevent, because he basically figured out, because of what they stole or what they were trying to do, it being some kind of mind control device, he ends up giving her a pair of glasses with the same technology in it to block it. So that's always very interesting, because it did seem like they kind of have that little flirtatious relationship, and I like it. She's kind of like, I don't know, they kind of have that little bit of a back and forth that's like very flirtatious, and I really like that. It makes sense why, like, out of anybody in the world, he only, like, he made those earrings specifically for her. He didn't worry about sending it to anyone else, you know. Interestingly enough, it does affect Clark, because Clark, Superman, did come try and help, but he ended up being pulled into it as well. Their explanation for it is because he's lived on Earth longer, his brain kind of, I don't know, that was their reasoning for it, is basically because he's lived there on Earth so long, his brain has become more human-like. Because Kira's lived here a long time, but not her brother. Her cousin has been here like since he was a baby. She's been here since she was like a preteen to teenager, you know. So it hasn't been nearly as long as Clark. And since we're talking about him, we meet. I forgot her name, but she's the alien that, you know, was trying to escape from the DOE headquarters. The one who, she's like, I was going to, at one point in time, I was going to marry your cousin. And Kara was like, ew, I just love that reaction. Like, gross, don't tell me that type of stuff. I feel like I remember that character from maybe a cartoon or something. Because that storyline about wanting to marry Superman, it seems familiar. I don't know. Maybe I'm just imagining things, but I swear I've seen that. I don't know whether it was Justice League or like the 90s Superman cartoon, something like that. It's just that particular character. I'm probably going to look it up afterwards. I meant to look it up, but I didn't. But anyway, we find out, you know, everyone's under Nam's control, which, you know, the one backing him is Indigo, which to me, you know, Nam doesn't see it, but Nam wants to basically, interestingly enough, Myriad's main purpose was to bring everyone together of one mind, because, you know, everyone has differences of opinions about things, particularly how Krypton was going to be run, because they were eating up their resources too much, and basically they wanted to have everyone join one mind to think the same, because that way they come together to solve the solution rather than letting their difference separate them, whether it's their different beliefs or different ethnicities. Well, particularly that falls here on Earth, because people let their differences cloud their judgments. Rather than working together, we let ourselves get separated by like our differences. And so that's what, you know, Myriad's supposed to be. They're supposed to be like, okay, we're bringing the human race together to fix the problem, prevent Earth from suffering the same fate as Krypton. I mean, granted, it'll be Nam at the top leading it. We have Indigo telling him, like, oh, you should totally, like, you know, you're being small-minded, you're just doing it for Earth, you should totally do it for you could rule the galaxy, which, in my opinion, is just her, you know, manipulating him, because she's trying to get him in the right spot so that, you know, when the time comes, she can kill him and then rule. Because, you know, she basically bluntly says it to Alex, like, you know, that she doesn't want the humans to survive. She wants to wipe them out. She's like, you know, which, you know, I'm thinking kind of what's going to come out as a fact is she's the main reason why Krypton ended up the way it did. Because isn't that how the story typically goes, is that Brainiac typically has something to do with Krypton's destruction? I mean, there's multiple, you know, reasons and stories about, you know, why Krypton got destroyed, but I'm pretty sure, like, in one, or at least some of them, Brainiac was like a leading cause in it. So I'm thinking Indigo is going to have something to do. Like, she tried to wipe out the Kryptonians, but, you know, she's using the Kryptonians now because, you know, to get herself in a more powerful position. Because that's why everyone's been so afraid of Myriad. Like, no one really wanted to talk about it, because it's such a dangerous thing because it's hard to break something like that. They're saying like once it's started, there's no breaking it, and that basically, if everyone found out what Myriad could do, it would throw off the power in the galaxy. Like anyone of any planet could be controlled. As we can see, even a Kryptonian's not 100% immune from it because Clark's under control of it now. It was very sad because like Nam used Jimmy and Wynn and a lady that made him jump out the window, but Kara was only able to save two of them. That's just heartbreaking. Essentially, Max's plan is to wipe out the Kryptonians by using like basically a kryptonite bomb he created. Basically, it would mean that it would kill the Kryptonians, but Clark and Kara would never be able to come back to Central City because it'd be radiating kryptonite. And then Cat's like, then what's the casualties for using something like that? Like 300,000 people would die. So, and it becomes interesting, because Kara kind of goes along with it. She's reluctant at first, but she's kind of like, oh, it might be the only way to stop this. Because it's like, yes, it's 300,000 people, being sacrificed, but there's 7 billion people out there. This is to prevent them from being controlled. Because, it's currently it's locked off to the city. It's national city. It hasn't gone, all across the world yet, so there's still time. But it's like it could affect everyone on the world. So it's like sacrificing 300,000 people for the greater good. It kind of becomes a question like that, But Kat kind of talks Kara out of it. It's like you have to be the hope. We can't give in to our fear. And she admits that like Max is afraid of her and she's afraid of Nam. So. It is kind of interesting that Nam, on multiple occasions, did seem like he didn't want to kill Kara. He makes excuses like, okay, he wants her to suffer and whatnot, but it's like, truly, like, I think part of him just doesn't want to kill her because no matter what, their differences of opinion, she is still a Kryptonian, especially considering she was the niece of the woman he loved, so. But, he still holds the whole Astra situation against her and Alex. And he does that little twisted thing where he basically makes, at the very end of the episode, we have him controlling Alex and she's wearing this, like, armor. It looks like a Kryptonian, like, powered suit. Like, kryptonite, I meant to say, powered suit. And she's got the sword that she used to kill Astra. It's basically going to make them fight. So either Kara kills her sister or her sister kills Kara. Either way, he wins in the end, so. To me, I feel like, it's all leading to, Indigo showing her true colors and being like, yeah, this was my plan to begin with, to take over this whole Myriad program. And because it just seemed like she doesn't seem like the type to be like, yeah, to submit to anybody. She seems like the I'll take charge type of, she's like, it's like she's letting Nam pave the path so that she can take over. I did like that, scene where we had with, John and Alex's mom, just like all those different questions she had about him when she saw him change. She's like all these scientific questions, and then John couldn't help but laugh. He's like daughter, like mom, because Alex first found out about him and just started asking tons of questions too. So. It is very interesting to see, where things go, because you have enemies, Kara and Max, joining forces to stop this whole situation. The plan is to broadcast, using the same signal that Myriad's using that to kind of broadcast, hope, using hope to break the spell of Myriad. So next week is the season finale, so we'll get to see where everything leads. Now, moving on to this week's episode of Gotham, we have Jim still trying to prove his innocence. To me, the oh my god moment was when he went to Nigma, because basically he had found evidence to prove that he wasn't behind everything that went down. The crimes, killing that officer, as well as, planning the bombs and all that whole situation that he wasn't the one responsible. So he ended up getting a cassette tape because essentially, because it's something Nigma didn't even know too, is that IA, like, when they get calls like that, they record them so that they can keep as evidence or whatever. And basically, him working with Harvey, were able to snag, that tape. Harvey ended up doing it by getting frisky with the lady at IA who watches the evidence. And she brought up an interesting thing. She's like, weren't you getting married? Didn't you have a fiance at one point? He's like, that's kind of through. It's like, I almost completely forgot about that because at the beginning of the season, he had like, it was a lady he met. I forgot what the situation was. It was a case. He met her through a case we saw in the show. And basically, she didn't want him to go back to the GCPD. So I don't remember if we saw them, like, I don't think they broke it off on screen. I guess it was something that was kind of like never really touched back on, but he was getting married because Jim came to him for help earlier in the season, and she didn't want Harvey going back to the GCPD, so, and he ended up doing it. So I guess that's one reason, because he came back to help Jim, be Jim's partner again. So it's like, I guess she didn't, I guess she felt like, Harvey picked the GCPD over her type of thing. So, but I don't think that was really ever touched on again. Essentially, whatever the case may be. It was very interesting. He went to Enigma. Enigma's still playing it off like, oh yeah, like I'm not the one behind all this. And then Jim says something that kind of irks Enigma's nerves, and that's, oh, the person behind all this is a psychopath. And then, Enigma tries to throw it back at Jim. It's like, okay, he's like, oh, I knew all those rumors were wrong. He's like, what rumors? That you killed Gallivan? Because if you had just killed a man in cold blood, that makes you a psychopath too. But there's no way. You're a good man, Jim Gordon. So, trying to make Jim feel bad about his decision because it's like trying to compare the two. So, but Jim did figure it out. I mean, a little too late though. I did like what he did in the situation though. Basically to get, because he had gotten away from Nigma, and ended up, Nigma led on like the reason why he was doing all this. It was essentially because Jim was looking into Kristen is the reason why he chose Jim, which is messed up because Jim was just doing a favor for Lee. He wasn't really investigating. And it's not, in his twisted mind, he was thinking like, oh, Jim's closing in on me, so I have to enact this plan in order to get Jim out of the picture. Because to Jim, he was like, you and me, we were friends. I considered you a friend. He's like, no, you did. You just looked at me as that pitiful guy who cracked riddles every once in a while. That's all. We weren't actually friends. It's like, oh, well, that's kind of sad that you think like that. But I like what Jim did. He ended up having Selena, because he chose Selena because out of anyone, it's like his captain wouldn't believe, it's like, oh, if he sent someone else in there, it's like, if Selena were to sell him out, that's no surprise. It's Selena. So, essentially, Selena went in telling him, like, oh, Jim's looking for somebody or something, and it got Enigma. It's like, oh, crap, he's looking for Kristen. And I did like that moment where he's kind of, like, talking to himself in a mirror. I just like that whole, like, that scene back and forth. It just shows you just how far gone he is. Previous examples have shown how far gone he is, but he ends up leading the GCPD to the bodies to Kristen's body, and he ends up getting captured. So Jim is in the clear now. His captain offers him his job back, but he's like, I'm not going to take it yet, not until he solves Dwayne's murder, because he knows like he owes it to Bruce, because he feels like because Bruce is in the situation now because of that whole situation with Matches, Matches killing himself. He's like, I should have been there. I should have got the Matches sooner. And Alfred Conn was like, yeah, you should have. Like, basically, what have you really done in this whole situation? You haven't really 100%, helped Master Bruce. And it's like, and it kind of, sunk into Gordon that he still hasn't lived up to that promise. He's known since the whole Matches thing, like, no, this isn't over. Like, we might have caught the guy we might have caught the trigger man, which I'm still unsure if Matches really was a trigger man or not, but at very least we still don't know who hired him to do it. So, But the captain also gives him Lee's number too. He's like, "I'll give you the Wayne file as long as you give Lee a call." Which he calls Lee, but she answers, but he doesn't say anything and hangs up. It's like, because he just can't bring himself to say anything because he feels so guilty because he didn't fight this hard enough. And the entire time he was locked up, Lee went through so much. She ended up losing him. Not just him. She also lost a baby. It's just too much. And I guess to him, he just doesn't feel like he deserves to talk to her. He doesn't feel like he plans to, track her down once he's done what he's promised to do, and that's fine, solve the Wayne murder case. But it's like, I don't know if he ever really will. Like, I feel like what's probably going to happen is Lee's going to come back when she finds out that Jim's, been cleared, and that's how it's going to happen. But it's just like he's keeping his distance from her because of that. And we also have at the very end of the episode, I liked it, Barbara coming back because essentially she got let loose because Miss Peabody is like, do you truly believe she's changed? And even Strange is like, honestly, I don't know. I don't even know what she's going to do because we're letting her out just to see what's going to happen, just like he did with Penguin, just to see what they're going to do. So I did like the fact that she popped up at the end of the episode. She was the last thing we saw in the episode, so I thought that was kind of neat. So it's like, where's that going to go from here? And speaking of Penguin, we had that situation where he was at his father's funeral. And, his family, his father's wife and children, it's like, they couldn't even pretend to be sad. They were just like, oh, God, could I just get over this with already? And anyway, basically, they were going to kick him out of the house, but Oswald's like, no, I can do whatever you want. So basically, he decides to be a servant, and they kind of treat him like crap. But just like, part of me is like, you do realize he's a criminal. He's killed a lot of people. Common sense would tell you to treat him a little bit better. But it kind of makes sense. He is kind of his docile stuff, so he wouldn't do anything. So it's kind of like, well, he's not the same person he was, so we don't have to feel any threat from him. He ended up finding the bottle, though, that was poisoned. I felt so bad when he killed that dog. I saw the dog there every time he kept looking at the dog. I was like, don't do it. He did it anyway, and poor doggy died. Can only assume it died. But that ended up making him snap. And I love that he ended up feeding her children to her. That is some very twisted stuff I didn't expect. I expected him to have killed them, especially when he was looking at them like that. But I didn't expect him to kill them and cook them and feed them to her. And then he killed her too. So it's like, wow. I love how at the end there, he's just like drinking with her dead body right across from him. It looks like good old Penguin is back. And then we have Bruce's situation where Bruce... I love that at the beginning, they took that guy's money, but rather than taking it, he threw it off the roof so that, anyone down in the streets below could take it. And Cena's like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, I'm not in this to be a thief. I'm in this, to understand the criminals in Gotham. He's like, but, I got enough so we could get, I kept enough so that we can get burgers. And I did like that kind of situation. It was kind of him and Selena playing house because he even stitched up her jacket that got scratched. She's like, oh, thanks. Well, sewed stitch, kind of the same thing. But sadly, they had a bit of a falling out because Alfred basically made Bruce choose because Alfred, Lucian had unlocked the computer and, there was more information about what Bruce's dad was doing. So he basically had to choose. Be with Selena, stay with Selena, or figure out this whole thing with his dad. He can't do both because he's like, even interestingly enough, Alfred was like, me and Selena have had our differences, but I will not let you put that innocent girl in danger because she has been a good friend to you, one of the few friends he's had. And basically he has to choose between the two. And he chose, following his dad work, which kind of breaks Selena's heart because she's like, we're kind of a team and then you're just like up and abandoning me. It's like, yeah, it's just because I'm kind of street trash and you're a Wayne, you're from a prominent family, so like this never could have lasted anyway. It's like, it's not even like that, but he doesn't really get a chance to explain. I guess in his mind, he's like, it's better off her hating him than really knowing, because if she knows, maybe she'll try and help, so. She even throws away the jacket he sewed up for her, so it's like, it's kind of sad. Things were working beautifully between them. They kind of made a really good team. Interestingly enough, now I'm thinking about, like, she basically, was being awarded a $10,000 for, turning in that information about Jim. Does she get the 10,000? I don't think that came up. It'd be kind of interesting to see what she does with that money. I thought it would have been interesting if she did get the reward money, because then her and Bruce could be using that to live on the streets with, essentially. It would have been interesting to see that, but now he's back home with Alfred, looking into his father, so. Quite interested to see where everything goes next week. And finally, moving on to this week's episode of Lucifer, where we have that beginning part. I love how Lucifer messed with Chloe's head, essentially being like, okay, it's like, oh, you don't remember all the stuff we did, and just like, no, we didn't do anything. He's like, essentially, you were so drunk, you were like, it's so hot in here, you stripped off your clothes and you hogged the bed to yourself. And I love how in this episode, basically, Lucifer's got this mentality in himself where he's like, he's getting a rush. He thinks of doing good deeds is kind of like drugs to him. He gets a bit of a high from it. It made him feel really, really good. And throughout the entire episode, he's trying to recreate that high. He's trying to do good, but in the wrong way. Especially in this case, it was basically a guy named Tim. He was a charitable guy. He used to, what was it, football he used to play, I think. He used to be a bad boy back in the day, but then he kind of turned into a charitable guy, went from good guy to, bad guy, kind of somewhat of a bad boy to a good guy. And I love how Lucifer even says a line like, Tim was a good guy, he was a charitable guy, it's like, he's like, we might as well be solving my murder, because he kept comparing himself to Tim, comparing him being like, oh, he did his one charitable, decent thing, and that's not sleeping with Chloe. And, throughout the episode, he's just trying to recreate that high, but he's unable to. One of my favorite parts is when he's singing to those ladies, because Chloe's like, do your thing where you kind of manipulate people, your hypnotist thing. And he's like, I'm not going to. He's like, you would think I would do that, wouldn't you? That's kind of the old me. But the new me will do it in a more spectacular way. And he starts singing to all the ladies. It was crazy that the woman that was sitting beside him literally took his hand and put it down, like, near her legs. It's like, wow, she has no shame. She's doing out in the public like that. And I love that lady that's talking to Chloe. Like, she does a little bit of gossiping to Chloe, and Chloe kind of gossips back about this and that. And she's like, oh, you shouldn't be talking about stuff. That's none of your business. It's like, you started the gossiping and you got pissed because she started gossiping back. It's like, okay. But, you end up finding out, sadly, that, the one behind it was, the victim's wife. Essentially, he was building a school in a country. Like, he was, the money he raised to be, to build a school there was actually, it was never built. It was actually his wife. She funneled the money. Basically, she sacrificed so much for him. She was there after his, like I said, if he was playing football, basically after his career was over. She's been through there, especially because you find out that he's gay and he was having an affair with his assistant. Granted, she knew, but she stayed with him out of appearances. She became so used to that lifestyle that she didn't want to give it up, so that's why she killed him. Really messed up. She even tried to kill Lucifer in this episode after, Malcolm tried to and failed. Which we finally found out what the hell that we found out multiple things. For one, we found out what that coin is all about. Essentially, it's kind of like a freeway in and out of hell. Lucifer's like, basically he was going to use it to return to hell one day, but he gave it to Malcolm so Malcolm wouldn't kill him. He's like, basically like, you do realize that a Minotaur can't actually pull you out of hell. He can't save you from hell, because you will die, you will eventually die. And when you die, where do you think you're going to go? You're going to go straight to hell, and you're going to essentially be mine, is what he's saying. But if you take this coin and let me live, and then we can let bygones be bygones. And he takes the coin and leaves. He had also, interestingly enough, brought it up to Dan. We kind of get our first look at what hell is kind of like. Well, a little bit more of a look of what hell is like. Because apparently, hell kind of uses what the gates particularly use what you love against you. In Malcolm's case, he loved life. So basically, it took all the joys of life away from him. It's like, oh, TV as well as people, just the things you would enjoy about life. And he was just kind of left alone. And he was dead for a couple seconds. But to him, in hell, it feels like years upon years. Granted, Dan didn't believe him. Dan just thinks he's nuts, because he doesn't know what's going on. I love how he even came to save Lucifer. He attempted to get, but it was after Vanessa had shot him. It kind of sucks for Lucifer, because he was kind of like, really? Because literally Malcolm just pulled a gun on him. A couple minutes later, Vanessa's pulling a gun on him. It's like, really? Twice in one day? And, Vanessa ended up shooting him. But he survived because he miraculously finds out that, and he puts it to the test. Chloe is what makes him mortal. It's not, it's not just a permanent thing. He's like, why am I mortal some moments and then immortal the next? That's why. Which is sad because it's like Chloe just talked about the fact is that she's it goes beyond just their relationship kind of goes beyond just, being partners. It's like they're friends. Like she feels like she's like, I can feel like I can be vulnerable around you. And Lucifer's like, I think you make me vulnerable too. And he cut his hand to test it. So that was interesting. I love how we have Maze and Amenadal like having like at dinner because he's basically like, you don't have anywhere else to go, do you? She's like, I have plenty of places to go, but she's like, yeah, you don't have many places to go to, because honestly they're kind of the same. Like I said, Lucifer has his thing. At least he has the club, he has the police to kind of work with, but Maze and Amenadal kind of don't. Like their whole reasons for being there revolve around Lucifer. So it's like, outside of that, what do they really have? And she kind of made him realize how kind of pathetic his life, Amenadal's life is too. Like, I don't have shit going on, but neither do you. And they kind of bond over it. Like, apparently, I don't know, it's probably like a religious thing that, because I'm not that well versed in religion, but apparently there's something with Lucifer and a goat. Apparently Amenadal was behind it, and Amaze is like, he hates it, and they're laughing and bonding, and they also have sex. I really love how when, like, the car is all like steamed up, and then at one moment his wings open up and cracks like the back windshield. I thought that was kind of neat, but I kind of figured as much. But Maze tells it to Lucifer. She's like, I had sex with your brother, and then he's like, okay, that's supposed to put you back in my good graces. She says it herself. She's like, I'm using him. Like, I was his inside girl for you. I can be your inside girl for him. So basically, finding out what he's working with, especially, now that she knows that he tried to have Lucifer killed. With all these new developments, it's interesting to see where things are, especially, Chloe and Dan, because, Chloe thinks Dan broke up with her. But, we now know, we know that was Malcolm, but now that he's free, it's like, what's he going to do? What's Malcolm going to do now that he has that coin? because he's not going to do what Amenadal says, and what's Amenadal going to do to him, now that he hasn't done what he asked for? Maybe we'll get the questions we're looking for, because apparently, there are only 2 more episodes left this season, so going to be crazy to see where everything goes from here. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.